The city lights glowed bright at night, but for the blind alien girl they meant nothing. Her world was covered in shadows. Every step she took was careful, slow, and uncertain. She carried a thin wooden stick in her hand, tapping the ground as she tried to walk through the noisy street. The voices around her were sharp and cruel. Some people laughed when she stumbled. Others brushed past her as if she did not exist. Her name was Lyra. She was young, fragile, and small compared to others of her kind. Her eyes were cloudy, pale white, without life. Since birth she could not see. Her family had abandoned her long ago, believing she would never survive. Now she begged for scraps of food near the busy market. Many ignored her cries. Some tossed tiny pieces of bread just to silence her voice. But deep inside she carried a quiet strength, a will to live even in the darkness. One cold evening, Lyra sat against the wall of a shop. She hugged her knees tightly, listening to the footsteps that passed her by. She could smell roasted meat, but no one shared it with her. Hunger burned inside her stomach. A child threw a stone at her and she winced but said nothing. She had learned to hide her pain, because crying only made the world laugh at her more. That night, as the winds grew colder, a new sound reached her ears. It was not the harsh laugh of strangers nor the cruel whispers of those who mocked her. It was the slow, thoughtful step of someone different. A human man stood nearby watching her. He had seen her many times before, always struggling, always ignored. His heart was heavy with pity. He knew the alien world he lived in was harsh, but seeing her suffer every day made him restless. The man's name was Daniel. He was not rich, not powerful. He worked as a small inventor, repairing broken machines, collecting scraps from junkyards and building strange devices no one cared about. Most thought he was useless, a dreamer wasting his time. But Daniel's mind never stopped creating. He looked at Lyra and thought, if I can build machines that talk and doors that open by themselves, maybe I can help her see. Daniel approached slowly, kneeling down so his shadow would not frighten her. Are you hungry? He asked gently. Lyra tilted her head. His voice was soft, unlike the others who always shouted or mocked. She nodded weakly. He handed her a small piece of bread from his pocket. Her thin fingers touched his hand as she accepted it. For a moment she froze. His hand was warm. No one had touched her with kindness for a long time. Why do you help me? She whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel smiled, though she could not see it. Because I can, he said simply. She ate the bread slowly, as if she feared it might vanish. Daniel watched her carefully. In her pale, lifeless eyes, he did not see weakness. He saw a hidden spark, something waiting to shine. That night, as the city slept, he returned to his workshop with a new idea burning in his mind. Meanwhile, Lyra sat under the stars she could not see. She wondered why the human had spoken to her at all. He was a stranger, yet his voice felt safe. She pressed her hands together and whispered a silent prayer. She did not know to whom she prayed. Perhaps the stars, perhaps fate itself. She only wished for one miracle, to see the world even for a single day. Days passed. Lyra continued her struggle in the streets. Every morning she faced the same pain, the same hunger, the same silence. But deep inside she now carried a small memory of the man who had offered her kindness. She replayed his voice in her mind whenever she felt alone. That tiny spark of hope gave her strength. Daniel, on the other hand, worked without rest. In his workshop, metal parts were scattered across the floor. Old wires, lenses, and scraps of glass lay in piles. His hands moved quickly, drawing, cutting, and welding. His eyes burned with determination. This was more than just a project. This was a promise he had made silently, to the girl who had lived in darkness too long. One evening, Lyra once again sat near the market wall. Suddenly, she heard footsteps she now recognized. The same gentle rhythm, the same careful pause. She turned her head and whispered softly, "Is it you?" Daniel knelt beside her again. His hands held something wrapped in cloth. She could not see it, but she could feel the energy in his voice. "Lyra," he said firmly, "I want to try something. It may not work, but I built it for you." Her heart raced. No one had ever said those words to her before. For the first time, she felt as if her life truly mattered. She reached out with shaking hands, ready to touch the unknown. And so, her struggle was about to change. The night sky was quiet when Daniel guided Lyra through the narrow alleys. She held onto his arm tightly, her steps nervous but trusting. The marketplace behind them had fallen into silence, and only the sound of her stick tapping against the stones echoed faintly. Lyra's heart pounded. She did not know where he was taking her, but something inside told her not to resist. For the first time in her life, someone was treating her not as a burden, not as a beggar, but as a person worth saving. Daniel led her to a small metal door hidden between tall storage crates. The outside looked broken and forgotten, like no one had touched it for years. He pulled a lever and the door groaned open with a rusty sound. "This is my place," Daniel whispered. "My workshop." Lyra stepped inside carefully. Though her eyes were blind, her other senses were sharp. The air smelled of burnt wires and old oil. She heard faint humming from strange machines. The floor was cluttered. Her foot brushed against scattered tools. Daniel quickly lit a small lantern. The warm glow revealed shelves stacked with gears, lenses, wires, and broken devices collected from across the city. His table was crowded with blueprints, half-finished gadgets, and glowing crystals used as power cells. To most, it looked like a room of junk. To Daniel, it was a world of possibilities. Lyra turned her head toward the sound of crackling energy. "What is this place?" she asked softly. Daniel chuckled. "It's where I build things no one believes in. Machines, tools, dreams." He placed the wrapped object on the table and slowly opened it. Inside lay a visor, thin metal frames holding dark glass lenses connected by tiny wires. It looked rough, unfinished, but there was a spark of invention in its design. "I've been working on this for months," Daniel explained. "It was just an idea, a way to help eyes that don't see, but now I want you to try it." Lyra froze. Her fingers trembled as she touched the cool surface of the visor. "For me?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes," Daniel replied firmly. "I built it for you." For a long moment, Lyra could not speak. No one had ever created anything for her. She had always been the forgotten one, left behind in the dark. Now here was a human risking his time, energy, and maybe even safety for her. Daniel adjusted the straps and carefully placed the visor over her eyes. The device hummed as the crystals inside began to glow faintly. Lyra gasped, feeling a strange warmth spread across her forehead. At first there was nothing, only the same endless dark. Her heart sank, afraid it was all just false hope. But then faint lines began to appear. Shapes. Light. Glowing outlines flickered in her vision. She raised her hands and saw blurry silver shadows where once there had been nothing. I can see something," she cried out, her voice shaking. Daniel's eyes lit up with joy. "It's working. The signals are weak, but they're reaching your brain. Try moving slowly." Lyra lifted her hand again. The shape became clearer. She turned her head and the faint outline of Daniel came into view. A glowing figure, tall and human. Tears formed in her eyes, though she still could not fully see. "I can see light." "I can see you," she whispered. Her whole body trembled with disbelief. Daniel's smile widened. "It's only the beginning. The visor isn't perfect. It needs adjustments, more power, but this is proof it can work." Lyra reached forward and touched his face gently. Her fingers traced the features she could now faintly sense with her eyes. "You've given me a world I never thought I'd have," she said softly. The moment was powerful, filled with raw emotion. But Daniel's face grew serious. "You must promise me something, Lyra. Do not tell anyone. This visor is dangerous, not for you, but for me. The rulers of this world don't allow inventions like this. They will not understand. They will destroy it, and maybe us with it." Lyra nodded quickly, fear tightening her chest. "I will never tell. I promise." For the next hours, Daniel guided her around the workshop. She learned to walk by trusting the outlines she now saw. Each step was shaky, but she laughed as she bumped into a crate. For the first time in years, she felt alive, free and more than just a broken child. Yet outside the workshop, shadows moved. Unseen eyes watched the small glow from Daniel's window. In the dark streets, whispers spread. "The blind girl walks differently now." Back inside, Lyra sat on a chair, breathing heavily from excitement. Daniel adjusted the visor's wires, writing notes on his blueprint. He was already thinking of improvements, clearer vision, stronger signals, maybe even colors. His mind burned with ideas, but in the back of his thoughts he knew the truth. Every invention had a price, and if the wrong people discovered what he had built, soldiers would come knocking. For now, though, he let himself enjoy the sound of Lyra's laughter. In her joy he found strength. In her courage he found purpose. And in her glowing eyes, faint though they were, he saw the reason to fight against the darkness of this cruel world. The workshop had become more than a room of machines. It had become the birthplace of hope. Lyra sat in Daniel's workshop with the visor strapped gently across her face. The world she had always imagined in her mind was now breaking into real shapes. Shadows, lines, and glowing outlines appeared in front of her, shaky and unclear, but still full of life. For her, it was nothing less than a miracle. Her hands trembled as she reached out. She could see her own fingers glowing faintly. She moved them slowly, marveling at the blur of movement that matched her touch. Tears rolled down her cheeks, and for the first time, they were tears of joy, not of pain. Daniel stood close, watching every reaction carefully. He held his breath as if her excitement alone could break the delicate machine.
"Easy," he whispered. "Don't push yourself too much."
"The visor is still unstable." Lyra turned toward the sound of his voice. What once was only a direction in the dark now carried an image, faint lines forming a figure. She gasped softly. "That's you. I can see you." Daniel's chest tightened. She could not see him clearly, not his face or his features, but to her it was enough. Her cloudy white eyes glowed faintly with the visor's reflection, giving her a strange, almost magical look. She stood, shaky at first, then steadier. Her stick tapped against the ground, but now she used it less. The room around her flickered in faint outlines, tables, tools, shelves. She laughed nervously, stumbling forward until her hand brushed against a wall. "I can see walls. I can see space," she cried out. Her voice echoed with a mix of disbelief and joy. Daniel smiled, though worry still sat in his eyes. He knew the visor wasn't complete. The signals were fragile. A sudden surge of energy or an overload could damage it forever. Still, hearing her laugh filled his heart with strength he hadn't felt in years. "Try walking a little," he said carefully. Lyra nodded, her breaths heavy with excitement. She stepped forward, then another step. Her foot brushed against a fallen wrench on the floor. She bent down, her shaky fingers closing around the metal. She lifted it, staring at its glowing outline. "It's small, heavy, but I can see it," she whispered. Daniel's throat tightened. He had dreamed of this moment, but seeing her face light up with wonder was more powerful than anything his mind had imagined. But outside the walls of the workshop, the world was not silent. A stray vendor who had once mocked Lyra noticed her walking differently in the market that day. She no longer stumbled the same way. Her head lifted higher, her steps quicker. Rumors began to stir. "Have you seen the blind girl? She walks like she has eyes now." Impossible. She was always useless. Maybe someone gave her forbidden help. The whispers spread like smoke. Back in the workshop, Lyra continued exploring. She traced her fingers over the wooden chair, marveling at its shape. She pointed toward the window where faint moonlight glowed through the cracks. "That light," she said in awe. "Is that the moon?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, that's the moon." Lyra turned, and though her eyes still struggled to form full pictures, she smiled as if she were seeing the universe itself. "I always imagined it. I thought it would be bigger." Daniel chuckled. "Wait until you see the sun." For hours they worked together. Daniel explained how to adjust the visor straps, how to focus on brighter objects first, how to steady her breathing when the signals blurred. Lyra listened carefully, eager to learn. Every small improvement was a gift she never thought she would have. But as the night deepened, Daniel's face grew serious again. "Remember what I told you," he warned. "You cannot let others see this visor. If the wrong people find out, they will come for me. And for you." Lyra nodded quickly, though fear crept into her chest. She clutched the visor tightly as if afraid it might be taken away at any moment. "I'll be careful," she whispered. Yet fate is not always kind. A sound outside the workshop caught Daniel's attention, a faint scrape of boots against stone. His body stiffened. He walked to the door, peering into the shadows, but saw nothing. Still, the feeling of being watched lingered in the air. Inside, Lyra sat quietly, unaware of the danger closing in. She removed the visor for a moment, rubbing her eyes. The sudden return to darkness hurt more now. She realized she had already grown attached to the light. The thought of losing it again filled her with dread. She whispered to herself, "I cannot go back to the shadows." Daniel returned, his voice firm. "Someone is watching us. We must be careful." Lyra shivered, holding the visor against her chest like treasure. That night she dreamed differently. Where once her dreams were filled with endless black, now shapes appeared. Faces, streets, the moonlight she had glimpsed. Even if blurry, they felt real. For the first time, she woke up smiling. But in the city square, an officer reported quietly to his commander. The blind girl sees. A human is behind it. The commander's eyes narrowed. Then it won't be long before the soldiers come. And so the gift of light had already drawn the shadows of danger. The streets of the alien city were never truly silent. Even at night, merchants muttered in low voices. Guards marched in pairs and shadows carried secrets. But lately the whispers carried one name. Again and again, Lyra, the blind girl, walks. Differently now. She moves as if her eyes are open. I saw her touch a stall without fumbling. The rumor spread from one corner to another. What was once a story of pity had turned into a story of fear. No one believed such change could happen naturally. And whenever the words forbidden invention slipped through the air, suspicion fell on Daniel, the strange human who tinkered with machines no one understood. Inside his hidden workshop, Daniel tightened the last wire on Lyra's visor. The small crystals hummed, glowing softly while Lyra sat patiently. Her excitement had not faded since that first moment of sight. Every day she discovered something new, the shape of her hands, the curve of a cup, the silver flicker of lantern fire. But Daniel's eyes told a different story. Each time he adjusted the visor, his jaw tightened with worry. He had noticed men lingering near the market. He had seen a soldier walk by his street twice in one day, and now when he looked at Lyra, he feared the gift he had given her might become the very chain that bound them both. Lyra, he said softly, you must be careful outside. Do not walk too proudly. Do not let them see how different you've become. She tilted her head. Why hide? Shouldn't they see that I can finally live like them? Daniel sighed heavily. Because they will not celebrate you. They will want to control you, or destroy me for helping you. Lyra clutched the visor. Darkness had once been her prison. The thought of losing light again was unbearable. Still, she nodded. I will try. For you. That evening she left the workshop with her stick, forcing herself to stumble slightly, pretending she was still helpless. It hurt her pride, but Daniel's words echoed in her mind. For now, her sight was a secret. Yet secrets rarely remain hidden. 2 merchants watched her from a distance. She walks like she pretends now. I swear her eyes follow the stalls. You imagine too much, the other muttered. But his tone was uneasy. A third voice cut through the air, low, sharp, dangerous. No, he is right. That human has done something. And if it is true, the soldiers will not forgive it. The whispers spread deeper into the night, crawling through the city like invisible smoke. Meanwhile, in the upper district, 4 figures entered a dim chamber. Their armor gleamed faintly under torchlight. Each step they took was heavy, controlled. They were elite soldiers, known for hunting down threats against the rulers. Their leader, Commander Vera, spoke coldly. A blind girl suddenly sees. A human is at the center. Find him. If the rumors are true, bring him to me. Alive, if possible. The soldiers bowed silently, their presence casting fear even in the shadows. Back in the workshop, Lyra practiced focusing her vision. Daniel placed objects at different distances. Tools, gears, even a candle flame. She tried to describe them, her words shaky but full of wonder. It's brighter up close, blurrier when far away, she explained. But I can see. Daniel, this is more than I ever dreamed. Daniel smiled faintly, though his mind raced with unease. Every invention he had made before, automatic locks, power lamps, voice recorders, had been ignored or mocked. But this visor was different. It gave life back to someone who had been left in darkness. It was powerful, and power always drew attention. He leaned closer, his voice firm. Lyra, promise me again you will tell no one. She placed her hand over her heart. I promise. Yet outside, near the cracked wall of the workshop, a shadow crouched low, listening. A spy sent to confirm the whispers slipped away into the night. His eyes gleamed with greed. Tomorrow the city would know the truth. Later that night, Lyra lay on a small cot in the workshop. The visor rested beside her. She stared upward, watching faint glows flicker across the ceiling. It wasn't perfect vision, but to her, it was a gift greater than life itself. But then she heard it. Distant boots echoing through the streets. Her body stiffened. She sat up, listening carefully. The rhythm was steady, trained, dangerous. Soldiers. Daniel also heard it. He rushed to the window, pulling the curtain shut. His chest tightened. "They're moving closer," he muttered. Lyra gripped the visor tightly. "Are they coming for us?" Daniel forced a calm tone, though fear burned inside him. "Not yet, but soon." In that moment, silence filled the workshop. The machines hummed softly, but the weight of danger pressed heavier than ever before. Lyra realized the gift she had longed for, the gift of light, was not free. It had already drawn darkness toward them. Outside, the whispers had finally reached the ears of power. And soon whispers would become orders. Orders that would shake both their lives forever. The morning began like any other in the lower markets. Merchants shouted prices. Children ran between stalls, and smoke from cooking fires rose into the gray sky. Yet beneath the noise, a strange silence lingered. People's eyes darted nervously toward the far end of the street. 4 armored figures walked slowly into the market square. Their boots struck the ground with heavy rhythm, echoing louder than any vendor's call. Each soldier wore black armor lined with glowing red streaks, helmets covering their faces and strange rifles strapped across their backs. They were the elite, enforcers of the rulers. Wherever they went, fear followed. The crowd thinned instantly. Stalls closed. Mothers pulled children inside. Whispers spread like fire. "They're here. They've come for the human. They've come for the blind girl." At the edge of the square, Lyra sat with her stick in hand, visor hidden under her cloak. Daniel stood a short distance away, pretending to examine old tools at a stall. His heart pounded as he saw the soldiers. He had hoped for more time. Now it was gone. The commander of the squad, Vera, raised a gloved hand. Her voice rang out sharp and cold. "A human inventor lives among you. He has broken the law of creation. Bring him to us." No one spoke. No one moved. The silence was thick. Then slowly one of the merchants lowered his head and pointed toward Daniel. "He's the one. The human." Daniel's stomach sank. He gripped the edge of the stall, his mind racing. He had always known someone would betray him. He just hadn't expected it so soon. Lyra's fingers tightened around her cloak. Fear burned in her chest, but so did anger. She wanted to scream at the merchant to protect Daniel, but her promise of secrecy held her back. The soldiers advanced. Their boots struck the stone like thunder. Daniel stepped back, his voice calm, though his body trembled. "I am only a repairman. I fix broken doors, broken lamps. Nothing more." Vera's helmet tilted slightly. "Then you will not fear if we search your home." Daniel froze. His workshop. His blueprints. The visor. If they entered, everything would be revealed. Before he could answer, Lyra stumbled forward, pretending to fall. Her stick clattered against the ground. The soldiers paused, their helmets turning toward her. "Wait," she said in a trembling voice. "Please, don't hurt him. He only gave me food." Her voice cracked with desperation. The soldiers watched her closely, scanning her pale eyes. To them, she was nothing, a blind beggar. But to Daniel, she was risking everything to shield him. Vera's tone turned colder. "Step aside, girl. The human is guilty." The crowd watched silently, afraid to breathe. Daniel's mind raced. He had no weapon strong enough to fight soldiers. He had no allies here. The only chance was to escape. He glanced at Lyra, their eyes meeting, or as close as her blurred sight allowed. She gave the smallest nod. "Run," she whispered. The word was barely heard, but it carried fire. Daniel suddenly kicked over the stall in front of him, scattering metal tools across the ground. The soldiers moved instantly, but the crash gave him a moment's lead. He grabbed Lyra's arm, pulling her through the panicked crowd. People screamed and shoved aside as the human and the blind girl vanished into the maze of alleys. "After them," Vera commanded. The soldiers charged, their armor clashing as they forced through the market. One raised his rifle, but Vera barked, "Alive! Do not kill him." Daniel dragged Lyra through a narrow passage between 2 crumbling walls. She stumbled but kept up, her visor flickering faint outlines of the path. For the first time, her sight was more than a gift, it was survival. "This way," she cried, guiding him left instead of right. Her blurred vision caught the shimmer of soldiers closing in from the other side. They ran through twisting corridors, over broken stone bridges, past rusted gates. Behind them, the pounding boots grew louder. Shouts echoed off the walls. Daniel's breath came heavy. His mind spun with fear and fury. He had built something beautiful, something that gave life, and now they hunted him like a criminal. Lyra's chest burned, but she refused to stop. "Don't let go," she begged, clutching his hand. "I won't," Daniel swore. Finally, they burst out onto a lower dock where abandoned cargo crates lay scattered. Daniel pushed Lyra behind a stack, his chest heaving. He peeked around the corner. 3 soldiers closed in from one side, the 4th circling to cut them off. They were trapped. Lyra pressed her back against the crate, her visor glowing faintly under her hood. Her heart raced. The darkness of her old life had been cruel, but this new light came with even greater danger. She realized something painful. The soldiers weren't just here for Daniel. If they learned what she wore, they would take her too. Daniel clenched his fists, his mind searching desperately for an answer. "If they catch me, they'll take the visor." "They'll take you." Lyra shook her head fiercely. "No, I won't let them." The soldiers drew closer, weapons humming with deadly energy. The moment had come. The hunters had arrived, and the hunted had no choice but to stand or fall. The dock groaned under Daniel's boots as he pulled Lyra behind the crates. The air smelled of rust and sea salt, and the hum of soldiers' weapons echoed closer with every step. 4 armored shadows moved like wolves, closing the trap. Daniel's heart pounded. His inventions had never been built for war. He had gears, wires, and scraps, nothing that could match soldiers trained to kill. But giving up was not an option. Beside him, Lyra clutched the visor tightly, her breath shaky yet determined. "They're too close," she whispered. Her blurred vision caught glowing outlines shifting in the mist. 3 on the left, 1 behind us. Daniel almost froze. She was guiding him now. For the first time, the blind girl was his eyes. "Stay with me," he muttered, pulling a small crystal device from his pouch. He twisted the dial and it sparked with light. He hurled it onto the dock, and in an instant a blinding flash exploded. The soldiers stumbled, their visors flickering to adjust. Daniel didn't wait. He grabbed Lyra's hand and ran. Their feet pounded across wooden planks as shouts erupted behind them. "Move. Don't lose them." The chase surged into the lower alleys. Daniel pushed aside barrels, kicked over carts, anything to slow the pursuit. Lyra struggled to keep up, but her visor gave her enough sight to dodge obstacles. She stumbled once, scraping her knee, but forced herself up. She would not be the reason they failed. The alleys twisted like a maze. Daniel knew them better than most. He had lived among scraps and shadows for years. But the soldiers were fast, their armor strong, their training relentless. Every turn, every sprint, the sound of boots followed close behind. Lyra's chest burned as she ran, yet she called out directions. "Left, 2 more corners, then stairs down." Daniel trusted her voice. They leapt down a broken stairway, landing hard on the lower street. Ahead, a half-collapsed tunnel led into darkness. "This way," Daniel hissed, pulling her inside. The tunnel reeked of damp stone and mold. Water dripped from above. Rats scattered as they entered. Daniel's lantern flickered weakly, casting thin light on the walls. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder. The soldiers had not lost their trail. Lyra pressed against the wall, gasping. "They're still coming." Daniel nodded grimly. "Then we keep moving." They ran deeper until the tunnel split into 2 paths. Daniel hesitated, trying to remember the old layout. Lyra's visor flickered, catching faint movement to the right. "They're circling that way," she warned. "Take the left." Daniel didn't question her. They darted left, just as a soldier's silhouette appeared on the other side. Laser fire scorched the tunnel wall, sparks showering the stone. Daniel pulled a small metal box from his satchel. "Keep running," he shouted, slamming the box against the wall. The device whined, then exploded with a burst of collapsing stone. The tunnel behind them caved in, cutting off the soldier's path, at least for now. Dust filled the air. Lyra coughed, her chest tight, but her grip on Daniel never loosened. "How long until they find another way?" she asked between breaths. "Not long," Daniel admitted. His eyes narrowed. "We need to reach the old sewer gate. If we get past it, they'll lose our trail in the lower channels." The 2 pushed forward. Their steps echoed against the stone, mixing with the distant roars of collapsing walls. For a moment, Daniel allowed himself to hope, but hope died quickly. A shadow loomed at the end of the tunnel. One of the soldiers had anticipated their move, cutting them off. His armor gleamed in the dim light, weapon raised. Lyra froze, fear tightening her chest. "Daniel." Daniel stepped forward, placing himself between her and the soldier. His fists clenched, though he had no real weapon left. The soldier's voice was a growl through his helmet. "Surrender, human." The girl, too. "She carries what belongs to us." Daniel's heart sank. They knew about the visor. Before he could answer, Lyra suddenly moved. Her eyes glowed faintly under the visor as she stared at the soldier. "No," she whispered. Her voice was soft but steady. The soldier stepped closer, weapon crackling with energy. But as he aimed, Lyra reached up and tapped the side of the visor just as Daniel had shown her. The device hummed louder, brighter. Then, a surge of light burst forward, blinding white, filling the tunnel like a star. The soldier staggered, his helmet flickering. His weapon clattered to the ground as he shielded his face. Daniel didn't hesitate. He grabbed Lyra and shoved past the blinded soldier, kicking the weapon aside. "Run!" he shouted. They dashed through the opening, leaving the stunned soldier behind. Their breaths came in ragged gasps, but they didn't stop until the tunnel widened into a cavernous sewer channel. Water rushed below and the air stank of rot. Daniel leaned against the wall, panting hard. Lyra collapsed beside him, shaking, her visor still glowing faintly. "You did that," Daniel said in disbelief. "The visor, it reacted to you." Lyra's lips trembled. She wasn't sure how it happened. But deep inside, she felt it. Something hidden in the visor, something more than Daniel had built. Before they could speak further, Daniel heard distant shouts behind them. The soldiers were regrouping. He clenched his jaw. "They won't stop until we're caught. But we'll make it out." "I swear it." Lyra lifted her head, her blurred sight fixed on him. For the first time, she didn't feel like a helpless burden. She felt like a partner in the fight. Together they rose, stepping deeper into the dark sewer channels. The chase was not over. It had only just begun. The sewer tunnel stretched wide like a hollow throat, water rushing below as Daniel and Lyra stumbled across the stone walkway. Their breaths were heavy, their steps uneven, but neither slowed down. Behind them, the echo of armored boots grew louder. The soldiers had not given up. Lyra clutched the visor, its faint glow reflecting on the damp walls. Her blurred vision showed only outlines, flickers of movement, but it was enough. For the first time in her life, she wasn't walking blind, she was fighting against darkness itself. "They're close," she gasped. Daniel nodded grimly. He knew there was no endless running. The soldiers would chase them until they were cornered. And soon they would be out of tunnels, out of tricks. He stopped near an iron platform above the water, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. His eyes scanned the surroundings. The old support beams, the dripping pipes, the narrow bridge across the rushing sewer flow. A plan sparked in his mind, dangerous but possible. "This is where we make our stand," he said quietly. Lyra turned toward him, fear trembling in her voice. "Fight them?" "Daniel, they're soldiers. They'll kill you." Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. "I don't care about me. I care about you. If they take the visor, they'll take your freedom. And I'd rather fall fighting than let them cage you again." Her lips trembled, but she nodded. She had lived all her life in darkness, ignored and forgotten. Now someone fought for her. She could not let him stand alone. The tunnel roared as the soldiers appeared, 4 black-armored figures stepping into the chamber. Their commander, Vera, raised her rifle, her voice cold and sharp. "End this chase. Surrender the device." Daniel stepped forward, standing tall despite his exhaustion. "It's not just a device. It's her life. And you won't take it." The soldiers spread out, weapons humming. Lyra's heart raced, but she tapped the side of the visor. The faint hum returned, the light inside building like a heartbeat. She clenched her fists. Daniel whispered to her without looking back, "When I move, trust me." The first shot blazed through the air. Daniel shoved Lyra aside, the beam striking the stone where she had stood. He hurled one of his crystal flash bombs, blinding the chamber with sparks. The soldiers staggered, their visors adjusting. Daniel sprinted to the nearest support pipe and yanked a lever loose. Steam burst into the air, filling the space with a thick cloud. Lyra focused, her blurred vision cutting through the fog in faint glowing lines. "2 on the right, 1 coming left," she shouted. Daniel ducked behind a beam, swinging a heavy wrench at the soldier charging from the left. The metal rang against the armor, not enough to break it, but enough to knock the rifle aside. The soldier swung back, sending Daniel crashing against the wall. Lyra cried out. Without thinking, she stepped forward, visor glowing brighter. She raised her hand toward the soldier, and once again the visor reacted. Light surged outward. a sharp burst that disoriented him. Daniel seized the chance, slamming the wrench against the soldier's helmet. The armored figure collapsed into the rushing sewer water below. 3 left, Daniel shouted. The others advanced, firing blindly through the steam. Sparks lit the chamber. Lyra stumbled but pointed again. Behind the pipe! Daniel swung another device from his satchel, a small sphere with jagged edges. He rolled it across the floor. A moment later, it erupted in an ear-splitting screech, a sonic blast that sent 2 soldiers staggering. But Commander Vera did not falter. She moved through the steam like a shadow, her weapon steady, her steps sharp. You cannot win, human. Technology belongs to the rulers. Hand it over. Daniel spat blood, standing tall despite his wounds. Technology belongs to those who need it. She needs it. That's all that matters. Lyra stood beside him now, trembling but defiant. You will not take my light, she whispered. Vera raised her weapon to fire. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. Then Lyra closed her eyes and pressed both hands against the visor. It pulsed brighter, brighter until the glow became unbearable. With a cry, she unleashed everything, an explosion of light that filled the chamber like a newborn sun. The soldiers screamed, blinded, their visors cracking under the surge. The tunnel shook with energy. Daniel shielded his eyes, pulling Lyra close to protect her from the blast. When the light faded, silence fell. The sewer water rushed below, but the chamber was littered with fallen soldiers. Their weapons lay scattered, their armor smoking from the overload. Only Vera stirred, crawling to her knees, her visor shattered. She glared at Daniel and Lyra, hatred burning in her eyes. This isn't over, she hissed. The rulers will hunt you. They will never stop. Daniel tightened his grip on Lyra's hand, then let them come. We'll be ready. He pulled Lyra toward the bridge, leading her away from the broken soldiers. Her legs trembled, her body weak from the energy she had unleashed, but her spirit burned stronger than ever. As they disappeared into the dark tunnels beyond, Lyra whispered softly, almost to herself, I was blind, but now I see, and I'll never give it up. Daniel glanced at her, pride shining in his weary eyes. You won't be alone anymore. Not ever. Together they vanished into the shadows, not as hunted prey, but as survivors who had lit a spark the rulers could not extinguish. The final stand was over, but the war for freedom had only just begun.